Well, what do you have it? We go out there and make one video talking about guys that are already on the Canadiens, and it's back right away afterwards to the draft-related content. In today's video, what I wanted to do was go over an idea brought up on Montreal Hockey Now. We're going to talk about smoke screens in this video. We're going to talk about draft strategy. We're going to talk about the Canadiens shortlist, as well as what this all might mean when you try to project what's going to happen on the date of the 2023 draft. Now, the draft is coming up shortly. It is, when is it? I'm going to have to Google this because I don't actually know the specific date. NHL Draft 2023 date. There you go. June 28th. So we've got about over a week-ish to go until this entire thing will settle down and we can actually just watch instead of speculating. But this article on Montreal Hockey Now from a week ago, published by Marco D'Amico, goes over a very intriguing sort of strategy that the Montreal Canadiens may be using for this year's draft. The article is linked in the description. Canadiens using a familiar strategy for top pick in 2023. If you wanted to go ahead and read the entire piece, it's available to you. But the reason I'm bringing this article up is because D'Amico goes out there and cites a very intriguing history lesson from last year that can be applied to how the Canadiens have gone through their process this year. Now, when it comes to the Habs and the discourse surrounding this team, the biggest conversations that everybody is always talking about involves Matvei Michkov. Yeah, that guy that we keep on continuously making videos about. He is a top prospect that may not end up getting drafted as a top prospect because of factors within his control, like his personality maybe, and outside of his control, like the status of Russia in the world right now. Habs fans seem to very much want Michkov to be a Hab. And regarding this idea, we had ourselves a few NHL sources that spoke to Montreal Hockey Now regarding this situation. They spoke on the condition of anonymity, and they mentioned how this is nothing new for Habs GM Kent Hughes. They're playing coy and not giving anything away to prop up the value of 5th overall. They're just trying to take advantage of the Michkov situation, just like they did with the 1st overall pick last year before finally making the Slafkovsky pick. This is where Marco D'Amico goes out there and highlights why this is relevant to this year. The Canadiens have even taken a step further this year, interviewing 80 players at the NHL Combine last week while taking a total of 0 prospects out for supper, a usual indicator of interest towards a prospect. Now, remember, last time we had talked about dinner, we talked about how the Canadiens took nobody, and a lot of Canadiens fans were replying saying, hey, that means the guy that they want wasn't at the Combine, right? Which means that the guy that they want is Michkov, because he was not at the Combine, and had they actually wanted anybody else, they would have taken them out to dinner, right? This is where D'Amico goes out there and shows off why this might be misleading. Last year, the Montreal Canadiens took Logan Cooley, Shane Wright, and Jonathan Lekkerimäki out for dinner, but not Slafkovsky. The Habs then selected Slafkovsky while many league executives were convinced they would be taking Wright, a feeling that prompted a ton of trade speculation. Now, that's really intriguing to hear about, that other NHL executives really thought that Wright was going to be the guy for Montreal, and I mean, let's face it, I thought they'd be taking Wright too, and based off of the chat in our draft stream last year, it's apparent that a lot of y'all did as well. So, you can imagine my shock when Shane Wright ended up slipping to 4th overall. Actually, you can't really imagine it. It's right there on video. It's on YouTube. But Montreal ended up taking Cooley, Wright, and Lekkerimäki out to dinner. Now, Lekkerimäki doesn't really matter. He was not going to be a 1st overall caliber pick, but I guess you could say, oh, if they wished that he would have dropped to the end of the 1st round and the Canadiens could have taken him there, okay, that makes sense. But for Logan Cooley and Shane Wright, these two guys were top caliber picks that you could debate in any sort of a redraft could have been 1st overall, depending on who you ask. And so, for Montreal to take out these guys and not Slafkovsky, only to actually select Slafkovsky at the draft, it kind of acts as a smokescreen now, doesn't it? Marco D'Amico's main point is that this year, the Habs are using a similar strategy by not taking any prospects out to dinner and being super wishy-washy fickle about who they're going to take with their pick. Last year, it was a really up and down conversation on Wright versus Slafkovsky, Wright versus Slav, and nobody really knew until the pick was made who would be the Canadiens' guy. That's part of the charm of this entire conversation, because the Canadiens, they wanted that. Kent Hughes and his squad, they wanted people to be confused. Kent Hughes did not want anybody to definitively say, okay, yeah, you know, the Canadiens are going to take X player at this spot. It's not like this year. Everybody knows Chicago has taken Bedard, but for the Montreal Canadiens at 5th overall, it's a little bit more difficult. Let's go back over onto the article here. Marco D'Amico writes this. This year, with a potential superstar available in Michkov at 5th overall, Hughes not only has to determine the proper value of Michkov to his club, but also what rival teams would be willing to pay to move up to draft Michkov, who won't last too long after 5th overall should the Canadiens decide to pass on him. Now that's another aspect I actually didn't think about until now, that the Canadiens, using this uncertainty to their advantage, might actually be able to garner some extra value out of this. Let's say the Habs do all their due diligence and they think wholeheartedly that the best player at 5th overall is somebody that we don't know yet. It's not Michkov, it's somebody else. If they tease all the other teams at 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th overall, saying, yeah, we might draft Michkov, we might get this guy. And somebody at like 8th overall, for example, like Washington, is like, darn it, man, we really want that Michkov guy. Screw it, call up Kent Hughes right now, we gotta make a trade for that 5th overall pick. If the Canadiens really don't care too much about getting Michkov, and they use the leverage of being able to draft Michkov as an opportunity to get more stuff, and they end up getting down in the draft and taking a guy they would have wanted to select anyway, this actually might be a really smart 4D chess type of move. Furthermore, if you go over to what the end of the article says, there have been whispers of the Canadiens leaning towards David Reinbacher or Ryan Leonard, but one of those players could be available if the Canadiens ultimately strike a deal to move back, thereby acquiring an additional asset. And so these are the two names that I wanted to talk about here. They're both in the Why I Want series, so if you wanted to get an extended look as to David Reinbacher, the big right-handed defenseman who kind of plays a similar game to Moritz Seider, and Ryan Leonard, the small, undersized, very strong skater, power forward-like player with a great shot. Both of these guys are available in the Why I Want series, so you can go ahead and check out those videos. But if the Montreal Canadiens really do feel that these two are the guys they want to take in this year's draft, whether it's at 5th overall or wherever else, then it would be a smart move to say, okay, hey Washington, we might take Michkov. How about if you really want this guy, you trade up with us, we get to your 8th overall pick, we get an extra asset in return, and you can take Michkov then. Then the Canadiens would go to 8th or something, just, filling in a random number example, and they'd take the guy they wanted to take anyway. They'd take a Reinbacher or a Leonard. That actually does make a lot of sense on paper if you're able to pull off a move like this. If you can really capitalize on what other teams want that the Canadiens have access to, but if they don't want it themselves, then it's a good opportunity for them. Speaking of which, let's go over to these two prospects and just talk about the value they could provide. David Reinbacher, right-handed defenseman, as we had said. If everything works out for this guy, you're looking at a two-way defenseman, a very smooth skater, a guy with some good offensive instincts, and an even better defensive awareness. He could be a really good rock for the Canadiens on their blue line. We know they have a lot of left-handed defenders, but the right side has been a little bit bare in comparison, so getting a guy like Reinbacher, maybe at 5th overall, would be a little high, but then again, Moritz Seider went 6th overall back in 2019, and I don't think that's a pick that anybody would regret nowadays. Then you have yourselves Ryan Leonard, the guy who could be a very nice complementary power sniper in the top 6 alongside of Caulfield and Suzuki. If you want to talk about goal scorers that are right-handed, yeah, Matvei Michkov comes to mind, but Ryan Leonard is also in there too. You could debate whether or not his profile is better than Michkov's. You could very much say that Michkov's is better because he was producing a lot more points against men. But for Ryan Leonard, if you're taking him this high, you're really believing in the upside. You're believing in the physical edge that he has. You're believing in the small stature but heart of steel that he goes out there and plays with every night. You're relying on the power forward, power sniper type assets in his game that really bolster him above some of these other NTDP guys in certain aspects. Sure, he might not have the same playmaking ability as Will Smith. He might not have the same motor as Oliver Moore. He might not have the same complementary assets as Gabe Perreault has, but he's got himself a very unique skill set that you don't usually see out of smaller players, and for the Canadiens, they've been drafting a lot of smaller guys, or using a lot of smaller guys over the years. What's one more, especially one who plays a lot bigger than he really is? If it is Ryan Leonard or David Reinbacher, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about these two guys getting taken by the Canadiens in the draft? And what are your opinions about the smokescreen? Them using their dinners as sort of a decoy as to who they want or who they don't want. Does this change your opinion of how Kent Hughes is approaching the draft? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. and bye.